Welcome to the Solomon Success Show, where we explore the timeless wisdom of King Solomon and the Bible as it relates to business and investing. False prophets and get-rich-quick schemes are everywhere. Let's not be distracted by these. Instead, let's go to the source, the eternal principles that create a life of peace, power, and prosperity. Here's our host, Jason Hartman.
Welcome to the Solomon Success Show. I'm Rabbi Evan Moffic, a client and friend of Jason's, and he has invited me to co-host this show with him to talk about the Solomon Success Principles. These are principles derived from the Bible that can help all of us in living a wealthier life, but more importantly, a more meaningful life, a life of purpose, a life of freedom, a life of true wealth. Because if there's any area of life where we need time-tested wisdom and advice, it's in the pursuit of wealth and success and significance. We have so many competing messages in our culture today. We're told what it takes to live a life of happiness, but the true principles, the true wisdom has been known to the wisest of people for a long, long time. And Solomon was among those wise people. And Solomon's wisdom is captured in the Hebrew Bible, in specific books of the Bible. And we're going to talk about some of those books. And today, we're kind of going to go into our strongest area where Jason has taught us so many principles. And that's in the area of real estate and income property. And I've talked a few times in a few past episodes about biblical views of money. You know, sometimes people think money is a dirty topic, something that we shouldn't talk about in church or in synagogue. And that's simply false. How we spend our money often illustrates our values, just like how we spend our time. Money isn't everything, of course, but it's a critical factor. And how we spend money, how we use money, reflects what we truly value in life. And that's very clear in the Bible. I mean, the Bible talks about money frequently. But another thing the Bible talks about is real estate, is land. Land is actually absolutely central to the Hebrew Bible. In fact, when God makes a promise to Abraham, God says to Abraham, if you follow my laws, I will grant you two things, land and children. Those are the two promises, land and children. Now, land is so important, of course, because land was where people lived. Land was wealth, total wealth back in ancient times. In fact, the Levites, who are the ancient priests of the Bible, their main requirement is that they can't own land because they were supposed to rely on the donations of the people. Land was the primary source of wealth. Land was critical to cattle, to plants, to food, to the entire system of life. So what are some of the principles that guided the way that the ancient Israelites saw land, saw the control and purchase of land? These are actually quite interesting and quite applicable towards law and practice and principles today. The first principle was that God owns all the land. All the land belongs to God. Essentially, as human beings, we're just borrowing it. In fact, all of our different practices of buying and owning and selling land are simply legal fictions. They don't really undermine God's ultimate ownership. In modern Israel, in fact, land is leased for 99 years and then bought and sold and traded as if it's privately owned. But the truth is, every year, somebody, if it's the current owner or the original owner, pays the government $1 as a symbol that the land actually still belongs to the state of Israel. Now, the government in this sense is a stand-in for God, that the land ultimately belongs to God, and this part of modern Israel symbolizes that truth. There's actually, I think, 10% of Israel is actually privately owned, but the vast majority of the land is owned by either the government or an organization called the Jewish National Fund. So what does it mean that all the land belongs to God? Well, part of that means is that we have to pass on that land. There's a kind of environmental stewardship built in to creation. There's a beautiful story of Midrash. I don't want to get political here because I don't think a lot of this has anything to do with the modern environmentalist movement, but there is a environmental dimension to creation. There's a story that says God took Adam around the Garden of Eden, and God said, I made all of this for you, but I'm only making it once. Don't mess up. Because if you mess up, there's not going to be a second chance. There's no second chance in preserving our earth, preserving our creation. So this land belongs to God, which means that the next generation of God's creation has to inherit that land. It belongs to them just as much as it belongs to us. This is an important principle. A second important principle, and this might be a little more appealing to modern day real estate investors and developers, is that what we do with the land matters. We have a responsibility to steward the land, to be productive on the land, to till and to tend the land. The land isn't meant to just sit vacant. The land is meant to be used for progress, for human purposes, for building houses, for building farms, for doing things that create more wealth. That's part of our job. Now, not all of the land. Part of the land is to be experienced as beautiful. Part of the land, there is a beauty to going out in the wild. I mean, the Torah is given in the wilderness. The wilderness of Sinai is a sacred place, bereft of all parts of civilization. The desert, the wilderness, plays a huge role in the Bible. But land is also there to be developed. It's there to be used. It's there to serve human purposes. That God didn't just give us the land to fritter away. God gave us the land to use, to till and to tend and to steward. This is a critical point. So as real estate investors, if you are one, and you probably are if you're listening to this and you follow Jason, that means that when we purchase land, when we purchase property, we have a responsibility to use it responsibly. We have a responsibility to use it for productive means, for housing, for providing clean, safe, affordable, functional housing. That is the proper use of land. That is something that, in a way, God would be proud of. That's something that we should be doing. A third principle is that we have to be honest with the land. In the book of Deuteronomy, I think it's Deuteronomy 26, about drawing clear boundaries, clear borders, and that when you own land, you have to be very clear on what you own and respecting what you own and what you don't own. And this is, of course, a foundational principle of modern real estate practices, that we have to be respectful. The Hebrew Bible believes in private property. Private property is in some ways at the foundation of what it means to be a free human being. And that's as true now as it was in the Bible. With private property, we're responsible for what we own. And if we take that responsibility seriously, we maintain a civilization. We maintain useful land, productive land. That was what ultimately, the Bible has an idea of private property, but not all cultures do. Part of the rise of private property in medieval England was the commons, which would exist, and nobody would take care of it because everyone assumed someone else would take care of it. But when we have private ownership, we take care of it, we steward it, and we have to be honest about what's ours and what's not. A fourth principle is that we have to respect creation. Now, this is connected to being a good steward, but respecting creation means that the land has different purposes and different functions. Some land is better for growing crops. Some land is better for cattle grazing. Some land is better for housing. We have to respect what the particular area of creation that we are responsible for. God blessed us with a beautiful diversity of types of land, and respecting that diversity is part of being a good human being. It's part of stewarding. Now, I think these are some really core, important principles. There are a couple differences, though, between how land functioned in the Bible and how it does today. In the Bible, oftentimes the king owned, or the tribe owned, all the land. In the Hebrew Bible, the lands are split amongst the 12 tribes of Israel. And it's kind of unclear how much a tribe owned versus how much a family owned versus how much an individual owned. Although there's this beautiful instance of 5 daughters who lost their father, and the land belonged to their father as head of the tribe. And when he died and they were not married, or else some of the land would have gone to their husbands, it went to the daughters. So there was actually this sort of beautiful sense of not equality, but understanding the role of women in the Bible. In fact, in 12th century England, the largest property owners were 3 Jewish women, aside from the baron. No, it wasn't England, it was Italy, 13th century Italy. Women have owned land in Judaism for a long time, but there is a sense that before that, there was a lot of land was owned by either a king or a tribe, not an individual. That's changed. What's also changed is the dangers of the way we use the land. You know, the kind of technology, the kind of possibilities that we have for how we use land today, it's not something that we've experienced in human history. The land isn't invincible. The land can't sustain everything that we put on it. And being mindful of the limits of how much we can develop, how much we can do. Jason has a great joke that, what do you call a developer? Someone who wants to build a house in the woods or on the beach. What do you call an environmentalist? Someone who already has a house on the land or on the beach. And there's some truth to that, but there are limits to what we can develop. And so I think if we ask the question, what does God think about real estate investing? God would want us to respect the land, to make good productive use of the land, and to be honest in how we treat the land and honest in how we deal with the land. And I think that these are all principles, all important parts of how we can function and live and invest today. We'll be talking even more about this in the future. I wish all of you shalom and talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.